surprise, surprise. It's mid-afternoon here on the East Coast, and I thought I would just do. I was going to just record a video, and then I thought might as well make it a live cast, because why not? And I'm probably there. This was completely unannounced, but I wanted to do it anyway. So we'll see if anybody actually joins this live cast, if anybody's actually out there at this juncture of the day. It's 1:43 right now, Eastern Time. Context for all of this. A couple of years ago, I recorded a couple of videos about Nine Inch Nails' Trent Reznor and the allegations that had been made against him, and it was a video. These were a couple of videos of mine that got a lot more traffic than I typically get, and there were a lot of Trent Reznor supporters out there, Trent Reznor ride or dies, who were just defending him to the hilt. I'm not going to bring back. I don't want to just totally repeat myself from what I had to say back then, but please go back and watch those videos if you're interested. What I'm about to talk about has a similar provenance, in that here I'm going to be talking about someone renowned and I think famous within certain circles, and certainly someone who is well respected as a music producer. I was just in Washington State, visited Kurt Cobain's hometown of Aberdeen, and recorded a video from the Cobain Memorial Site, or whatever it was called. So this guy this guy I'm about to talk about, who recently died within the last, I think, couple of weeks. I don't know the exact date right now. His name is Steve Albini. He worked with Nirvana. He worked with a ton of other people, and he was by all accounts a very skilled and talented music producer. But there are problematic things about him. And I put that word in quotes because I hate that word. But there are things about this guy, this Albini, that I think are worthy of discussion. I'm going to be reading from this article written by someone calling himself Joshua Goldberg. This is an article on Medium. The title is "Now That Steve Albini is Dead, Let's Reflect on His Admitted Love and Promotion of Child Pornography." All right. So, every time you talk about this kind of subject, every time you talk about adults who criminally exploit children, occupying high positions within the industry, or high positions in government, or various places, what's become known as pedogate, or Pizzagate. Of course, you have the debunkers come out, and they try to say, no, this is all just a moral panic. This is just the satanic panic. Well, there's nothing really about Satan here. Nothing directly about Satan, anyway. But it seems that this Steve Albini, who died of a heart attack, age 61, earlier this month, and again, not to speak ill of the dead, but to draw attention to things that I don't know, I think need to be discussed. Okay, so I'm going to begin with this article just a little bit of the way down. This author writes, and I'll provide a link to this article below. If you are reading this, then you probably have heard that the esteemed rock musician and producer Steve Albini, who produced bands like Nirvana and the Pixies, along with fronting bands like Big Black and Rape Man. Yeah, that was a band he was in. I don't necessarily hold that against him, but I don't know. Let's just continue. Died today at the age of 61. All right, and this was published on May the 8th, so that must have been the day that Steve Albini died. The usual lugubrious outpourings of phony grief have been rampant on social media, with countless people who have never even heard of him until now professing to have been his biggest fan. In other words, the usual thing that happens when someone even remotely famous dies. In reality, however, Steve Albini was certainly no hero. In fact, Albini was an admitted lover of child pornography. And I'm not going to censor myself here. I'm just going to read the words. Child pornography. Who openly promoted said child pornography in language so sickening that you may feel like a criminal just for reading it. Here's Steve Albini recounting buying child pornography while in Hamburg. This is from a zine, like back in the old days. Back in, I guess it was, I'll just say sometime in the 90s, I'm guessing. So he wrote back then in this zine. This is an excerpt from it. Jaded as I am, I can't help but flip seeing a girl and a guy of 12 or 13 tops. Okay, this is a little graphic here. Ramming Martell bottles up each other's rear ends. These are not the Dutch equivalent of abused trailer park kids either. They look to be in excellent health and seem to be honestly enjoying this. You think? Anyway. Makes all the conventional arguments against this kind of thing seem really silly. Okay, I'll refrain from commentary. Just read what he wrote. They're kids. Kids like to play with their own and other people's privates. They're just being photographed at it. Well, yeah, that's the issue, isn't it? I mean, kids have played doctor or whatever forever, but this is being photographed by somebody else who's distributing it. Hence, CP. Now, people who get a voyeuristic charge out of watching them, like me, says Steve Albini, I guess, well, we've got some grip on reality problems. I don't know if I would characterize your problems as grip on reality, but I would agree that you've got problems. Okay. There's maybe 1% of all pornography that has any effect on me, and it's definitely not a turn on very often, but when it's as weird as this, it's pretty hard to take. All right, well, at least he's honest about feeling conflicted about it, but he shouldn't be purchasing it. I mean, I don't know. I think the quote speaks for itself. All right, I don't think I need to go any further into that. The quote above came from a Boston-based magazine called Forced Exposure that was in publication from 82 to 93. The issue with the Big Black Tour diary above was the winter 98. Okay, 88. Oh, it's the 80s. I think that's vile. It gets even worse. Here's Albini promoting his lifelong friend Peter Sotos's child pornography magazine, Pure. Oh, boy. Oh, I don't know whether I can really... Okay. This is Albini describing this child pornography magazine put out by the notorious pervert Peter Sotos. Albini writes, the cover of Pure 2 is a guy holding open a toddler's puny hole so his spuzz can dribble out. I'm sorry to be subjecting you to this. The girl is past crying she is destroyed. Like I said, I like that sort of thing. Yeah. The girl, I'm guessing what he means by the girl is that the girl is the toddler. And the hole that he's opening so his spuzz. I mean, this is just awful all around, but the use of the word spuzz just makes it all the worse. Yeah. The girl is past crying. She is destroyed. The quote above is from Forced Exposure magazine, in this particular case, the summer '85 issue. Peter Sotos, who stated that child abuse is a sublime pleasure, was later convicted for producing and distributing child pornography. And then they have an excerpt from the Chicago Tribune, which tells the story of his arrest, which I'm going to skip over because it's not so much about Sotos as it is about Albini here. Albini also produced an album for Sotos called Buyer's Market, which Wikipedia describes as sound collages of spoken word samples from parents, law enforcement officers, and victims of sex crimes and pedophilia. From Vice. The group's third member, Peter Sotos, Albini was in a band, or he produced an album, and Sotos, this admitted child pornographer, was a member of this venture. Creates the darkest part of the group's work. The Chicago native makes audio collages of tear-stained TV interviews with murder victims' families, crack whores, and abused children. The results of his efforts have appeared on their past two albums and are deeply stomach-churning, if at times hilarious. Sotos claims to masturbate over them. All right. So this is the kind of activity that Steve Albini played a role in. When asked, in 2012, you could say this was happened a long time ago, but when he was asked in 2012, which wasn't so long ago, this is what Steve Albini had to say, doubling down on his support for Sotos. Peter's an old friend. I've known him for 30 years or so. I'll help him do whatever he wants to do, from wash his car to edit his album. I'll help him do whatever he wants to do. I'll just pass over the implications there, but just make sure you understand who he's talking about and the kind of things that he has been convicted for doing. And here's Steve Albini saying he's an old friend and I'll help him do whatever he wants to do. Okay. So there you go. There you go. That's the article comes to a rather abrupt stop after that. It goes without saying one cannot arrest, try, or imprison dead people. Just ask Jimmy Savile's countless victims. That doesn't mean that there isn't. It isn't still important to know about it. However, I ask that you please share this information with anyone you see posting about Steve Albini, as very few people know about it. I'm guessing that his death has been greeted with a lot of encomiums of praise and that nobody is mentioning this kind of stuff. But this is not harmless. This is something that ought to be ought to be acknowledged. Let me see if I can just find one other thing here. Okay. So, I mean, a lot of this is just like, look, I understand being shocking. I understand having a dark sense of humor. I get all of that. I'm not a prude, but what we see in a report like this, and um, this is one of the few articles that's acknowledging this. Let me see if I can actually find. I'm sorry, this is very poor. This is poor viewing, but there's one other article that I thought was good that I uh, want to discuss. This is from somebody's. Okay, here we go. Okay, so I'll also link to this. This is a post on Substack from Luke Dodson, who appears to be friends with Jason Horsley, who's somebody that I did a podcast with once, and I think is a good and interesting writer and thinker. Okay, so he begins. It no longer comes as a surprise to hear of a sudden celebrity death. What with all of the climate change that's been happening since 2021, I like that. With the recent news that Steve Albini died of a heart attack at the age of 61, but the recent news that Steve Albini died of a heart attack at the age of 61 has the feeling of a watershed moment for those who grew up listening to alternative music. It goes into some of his the various artists that he worked with. He generated his own share of controversy as frontman for the bands Big Black, Rape Man, and Shellac. His provocative sensibility, given a blind eye during the permissive 1980s and 90s, came back to haunt him after the great awakening of 2020, and he engaged in the standard groveling to retain his standing among his overwhelmingly progressive audience. So he's going to apologize for being sexist and making jokes about rape and using racial slurs here, but he's not gonna say anything about the CP stuff. Okay, so this is quoting Steve Albini in 2020. A lot of things I had said and did from an ignorant position of comfort and privilege. Ooh, I'm calling out my own privilege. Aren't I special? Are clearly awful, and I regret them. It's nobody's obligation to overlook that. And I do feel an obligation to redeem myself. If anything, we were trying to underscore the banality, the everyday nonchalance toward our common history with the atrocious, all while laboring under the tacit, mistaken notion that things were getting better. I'm overdue for a conversation about my role in inspiring edgelord shit. All right, so he offers this sort of, well, we were doing it to, we had the best of motives, but now I can see, with all the light shed on me because of all the light shed by the great awakening of 2020. Yeah. Anyway, it should come as no surprise then, Luke Dodson goes on to say in this article, that during this period he was also pushing the mRNA injections and calling the unvaccinated a fucking cancer. he went all correct here. Like that's the thing, in that it used to be transgressive. It used to be that the more transgressive you could be, the better. In these kinds of circles, no matter what you were talking about, whether it was racism or CP or something else. But now, we've got to apologize for the racism and sexism and homophobia stuff. But the CP, that's just like the people who are bringing that up are just, this is just to say they're just in a moral panic, and there's no need to respond to any of that. This is their mindset. This is the mindset of people like this. In retrospect, the article goes on, the puerile antinomianism that Albini represented can be seen as an essential step toward the quasi-satanic wokery of today. It's as if they were the advance guard, tearing down the structures that held society in place, only to be discarded when it was time for the new structures to be put in place. Think of industrial pioneers Throbbing Gristle, who combined sexual deviance and androgyny with fascist imagery. The even more extreme White House, whose dedication to perversity led them to a long-standing collaboration with Albini's friend, the writer Peter Sotos. Sotos himself is an interesting case study of how late 20th century transgressive culture provided a context for deviants to flaunt their degeneracy in public and even attain a modicum of recognition for it. Simply put, Sotos is a child pornographer. All right. Sotos was a child pornographer, and Albini was a good friend of his. I mean, and he didn't seem put off by his proclivity for child pornography. Despite this, Sotos has had some unsurprisingly mainstream defenders. The gossamer thin veneer of art provides some incredibly convoluted justifications. All right. Somebody from the Prague Literary Review says that he's a rigorous thinker who's brutally spare prose and complex inquiries and desire, making him one of a handful of contemporary authors justifiably worth their transgressive salt. New York Press describes him as the world's foremost literary brutalist in a glowing review. Well, Vice, the enforcer of wokery in recent years, has published several articles complimentary to his work. Yeah. Albini also admired Sotos and produced an album for him titled Buyer's Market. We've discussed that in the other article. Albini defended his friendship in 2012. Okay, we read that quote already. Peter's an old friend. I'll help him do anything he wants to do. Emphasis added. And this Dodson, puts that phrase in italics. Albini drew criticism for this double down. Albini's post-2020 repentance, however, was primarily focused on his use of politically incorrect language during the no-holds-barred 1980s, not on his self-confessed appreciation for sadistic child pornography. In the woke 2020s, sexual deviance is a virtue, while hate speech is one of the deadly sins, alongside refusing pharmaceutical interventions into one's genome. Right on, brother. Some good writing here. Cuts like a knife, but it feels so right. Well, I have no doubt that he was more or less sincere in his vitriolic and hateful condemnation of the unvaxxed. The existence of some form of compromat relevant to Albini is not implausible. It may even go some way to explain the ferocity of his rhetoric. Yeah. So he apologized for his edgelordism in confronting a band called Rape Man and using racial slurs and doing that kind of thing, but never was called to task for aiding and abetting a child pornographer and for purchasing child pornography. All right. Right. So, and the guy, he owned, I mean, he was a producer. He had a studio, and I don't know, people with studio, like, who is the, oh man, I can't think of his name right now. You know, the famous music producer who was responsible for the Wall of Sound. That guy who was accused of murdering his wife. Um, in some place where there was Phil Spector. Thank you. Yes, thank you. Quick bump. Um, you know, it's sort of, I can't help but think to myself, these guys who know a lot about sound and can put you in a soundproof room. I mean, you know, a lot of mischief can take place in a soundproof room. I don't think I need to belabor that point, do I? I mean, you can do things in a soundproof room and nobody will hear anything. And if there's nobody recording it, then it basically didn't happen. So, I mean, unless somebody saw you go in there with somebody else and then that other person reported injuries afterwards. But if that didn't happen immediately afterwards, if nobody saw you, then I don't know. That's just what I think. They're both. Phil Spector was very talented, and Steve Albini was very talented as well. But neither one of them were good guys. And as far as just the plague of the entertainment establishment, the plague of the political elite, the sexual exploitation of children. I mean, people are still going to come at me and say, "Oh, you're just an alarmist. You know, you know, this has been debunked. This is a moral panic." Well, no, it's quite real, and it needs to be discussed. It needs to be discussed more often than it is. Okay. So I did, this was something I did spur of the moment. I decided to go live with it spur of the moment. Just maybe because, you know, I thought I was just going to be reading a bunch of stuff. So maybe it would be a good way to hear back from some people if they're actually out there. So that's why I'm doing it. That's why I decided to do it, Armored Ghost. It was a spur of the moment sort of thing. But others will listen to it just as hopefully will watch it just as a normal, regular video. Quick pump. Ronnie Spector was very cute. Yeah, just like Ronnie said, be my little baby. Oh, I guess so. Ronnie Spector, or she married him. But who was it that he allegedly killed somebody? Was it his first wife? I don't know. I don't remember right now. Anyway, it's a skeezy business, and it's you know, I would say keep your children far away from anything that relates to politics or the entertainment industry. Far away. Keep them away from that stuff. No good can come of it. Quick Pump says. Oh yeah, someone else, she kept the name. I think they were married in the 60s. Right. Well, that could be investigated with rapidity. I'm not going to do it right now because I'm gonna wrap this thing up. But I appreciate those of you who did come out and watch this while I was recording, and I'm going to hope that the others who didn't see it live will watch it later and add their own thoughts concerning this matter. Thanks again, and I'll talk to y'all soon.